Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. They went to the house of an old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife, and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and 3 servants. Their names were Ivy, Margaret, and Betty, but they do not come into the story much. He himself was a very old man, with shaggy white hair which grew over most of his face as well as on his head, and they liked him almost at once. But on the first evening, when they came out to meet them at the front door, he was so odd-looking that Lucy, who was the youngest, was a little afraid of him, and Edmund, who was the next youngest, wanted to laugh and had to keep on pretending he was blowing his nose to hide it. As soon as they had said goodnight to the professor and gone upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room, and they all talked it over. "We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake," said Peter. "This is going to be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like." "I think he's an old dear," said Susan. "Oh, come off it," said Edmund, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, which always made him bad-tempered. "Don't go on talking like that." "Like what?" said Susan. "And anyway, it's time you were in bed." "Trying to talk like mother," said Edmund. "And who are you to say when I'm going to bed? Go to bed yourself." "Hadn't we all better get to bed?" said Lucy. "There's sure to be a row if we're heard talking here." "No, there won't," said Peter. "I tell you, this is the sort of house where no one's going to mind what we do. Anyway, they won't hear us. It's about 10 minutes' walk from here down to that dining room and any amount of stairs and passages in between." "What's that noise?" said Lucy suddenly. It was a far larger house than she had ever been in before, and the thought of all the long passages and rows of doors leading to empty rooms was beginning to make her feel a little creepy. "It's only a bird, silly," said Edmund. "It's an owl," said Peter. "This is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I shall go to bed now. I say, let's go and explore tomorrow. You might find anything in a place like this. Did you see those mountains as we came along? And the woods? There might be eagles. There might be stags. There'll be hawks." "Badgers," said Lucy. "Foxes," said Edmund. "Rabbits," said Susan. But when the next morning came, there was a steady rain falling, so thick that when you looked out the window, you could see neither the mountains, nor the woods, nor even the stream in the garden. "Of course it would be raining," said Edmund. They had just finished their breakfast with the professor and were upstairs in the room he had set apart for them. A long, low room with 2 windows looking out in one direction and 2 in another. "Do stop grumbling, Ed," said Susan. 10 to 1 it'll clear up in an hour or so, and in the meantime we're pretty well off. There's a wireless and lots of books." "Not for me," said Peter. "I'm going to explore in the house." Everyone agreed to this, and that was how the adventures began. It was the sort of house that you never seem to come to the end of. It was full of unexpected places. The first few doors they tried led only into spare bedrooms, as everyone had expected that they would. But soon they came to a very long room full of pictures, and there they found a suit of armor. And after that was a room all hung with green, with a harp in the corner. And then they came 3 steps down and 5 steps up, and then a kind of little upstairs hall, and a door that led out to a balcony, and then a whole series of rooms that led into each other, and were lined with books. Most of them were very old books, and some bigger than the Bible in a church. And shortly after that, they looked into a room that was quite empty, except for one big wardrobe. the sort that has a looking glass in the door. There was nothing else in the room at all except for a dead blue bottle on the windowsill. "Nothing there," said Peter, and they trooped out again. All except Lucy. She stayed behind because she thought it would be worthwhile trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she felt almost sure that it would be locked. To her surprise, it opened quite easily, and 2 mothballs dropped out. Looking into the inside, she saw several coats hanging up, mostly long fur coats. There was nothing Lucy liked as much as the smell and feel of fur. She immediately stepped into the wardrobe and got in among the coats and rubbed her face against them, leaving the door open, of course, because she knew that it is very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe. Soon she went further in and found that there was a second row of coats hanging up behind the first one. It was almost quite dark in there, and she kept her arms stretched out in front of her so as to not bump her face into the back of the wardrobe. She took a step further in, then 2 or 3 steps, always expecting to find woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she could not feel it. This must simply be an enormous wardrobe, thought Lucy, going still further in and pushing the soft folds of the coats aside to make room for her. Then she noticed that there was something crunching under her feet. "I wonder, is that more mothballs?" she thought, stooping down to feel it with her hand. But instead of feeling the hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold. "This is very queer," she said, and went on a step or 2 further. Next moment, she found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough, and even prickly. "Why, it is just like branches of trees," exclaimed Lucy. And then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away where the back of the wardrobe ought to have been, but a long way off. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later, she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood at nighttime with snow under her feet and snowflakes falling through the air. Lucy felt a little frightened, but she felt very inquisitive and excited as well. She looked back over her shoulder, and there, between the dark tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe, and even catch a glimpse of the empty room from which she had set out. She had, of course, left the door open, for she knew that it was a very silly thing to shut oneself into a wardrobe. It seemed to still be daylight there. "I can always get back if something goes wrong," thought Lucy. She began to walk forward, crunch, crunch, over the snow and through the wood towards the other light. In about 10 minutes, she reached it and found it was a lamp post. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of a wood and wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter-patter of feet coming towards her. And soon after that, a very strange person stepped out from among the trees into the light of the lamppost. He was only a little taller than Lucy herself, and he carried over his head an umbrella white with snow. From the waist upwards, he was like a man, but his legs were shaped like a goat's. The hair on them was glossy black, and instead of feet, he had goat's hooves. He also had a tail, but Lucy did not notice this at first because it was neatly caught up over the arm that held the umbrella so as to keep it from trailing in the snow. He had a red woolen muffler around his neck, and his skin was rather reddish too. He had a strange but pleasant little face, with a sort of pointed beard and curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck 2 horns, one on each side of his forehead. One of his hands, as I have said, held the umbrella. In the other arm, he carried several brown paper parcels. What with the parcels and the snow, it looked just as if he had been doing his Christmas shopping. He was a faun, and when he saw Lucy, He gave such a start of surprise that he dropped all his parcels. "Goodness gracious me!" exclaimed the fawn. Hello everybody and welcome back to Faithful Fables. Today we are going to take a look at one of the most beloved and one of the most developed characters in all of Narnia. This character is going to become one of Aslan's closest friends. And this person really is the person whom the readers see and experience most of Narnia, especially in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and Voyage of the Dawn Treader. This character is only absent from Silverchair and Magician's Nephew, seeing as this character is in the background of A Horse and His Boy and is at the end of Last Battle. This character is none other than Lucy Pevensie, whose story grows from fear to courage in order to live up to the name that Aslan gave her, Queen Lucy the Valiant. We see Lucy throughout all of the chronicles truly encompass what it looks like to be pure in heart. Make sure that you guys comment if you're on Spotify or if you're on Apple, you can leave a rating and you can leave a comment that way. Make sure that you send me a message. There's a link in the description to do that. And if you feel so inclined and you're able to, please consider supporting the show. There's also a link for that in the description as well. It will help to continue to be able to make these episodes happen. So please guys, the reason why I ask you to comment as well, which I will share your comment in a future episode if you do so, but I really just want to develop a community between me and the people that are listening to these shows. And so that is one way that we can help encourage to do that. And so now, without further ado, let us get into the story of Lucy Pevensie in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So Lucy Pevensie was born in 1932 in London, and she's the youngest of 4 siblings. Her oldest brother, Peter, is 5 years older than her. Lucy looks up to her big brother as a sort of protector, which I think naturally that would occur if I believe he's 13 and she is 8. I think that makes a lot of sense. Peter is also seen as giving Lucy more respect than Edmund and Susan give to her. So her sister Susan is 4 years older, and Lucy looks up to Susan as a role model. Lucy also admires Susan for her beauty, and she hopes that she can grow up to be like Susan. Her other big brother, Edmund, is just over a year older than her. Because they are so close in age, Edmund teases her quite a bit, but they are still able to love each other very much. Lucy is described as fair-haired, happy, compassionate, and deeply sensitive as well as intuitive. She can also be fearful and vain, and we see kind of the fearful side even in what I had just read in the opening, where when they first meet the professor, she was a little bit afraid just based off of his appearance. And so obviously, I mean, being an 8-year-old, that kind of makes sense that you would have those moments. So it is through Lucy that C.S. Lewis actually shares his own religious and personal sensibilities. And I think those become obvious as we read the books. Throughout the entirety of the book, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we see Lucy caring about other people. And so Lucy was 8 years old, as I mentioned, in 1940. She was subject to both the fatigue and enthusiasms of being very young. So when the Blitz happened in London, all the children were evacuated to the British countryside. Unlike in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the movie, which we see the children being evacuated after the air raids, it's more likely that the children were actually evacuated before the bombing occurred. And so Lucy and her siblings are sent to a mansion which belonged to Diggory Kirk. And seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain. And when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you, falsely, for my name's sake. In the mansion, Lucy discovers a wardrobe in an empty room, and upon entering it, finds herself in the magical world of Narnia. The reader experiences all the charms of Narnia through her lively senses. And one thing I thought of when I was reading the chapter before, how Lucy liked to the feel of fur on her skin. And it just kind of reminded me of how close she does get to Aslan, and just probably feeling his fur and everything must have been very nice for her. But anyways, at this point, Peter didn't think anything of the wardrobe, but Lucy thought it was worthwhile to stay back and try the door, to see if it would open, even though she thought it would probably be locked. And we see here that Lucy has a pure heart in the way that she doesn't want to just focus on big things, but it's actually worthwhile to stay back for her. And so, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And Lucy saw Aslan, and even in different ways than the others did. And really, Lucy is a good example of being pure in heart. And so there's something else I want to read from the book. This is actually chapter 2 now. And I think keep that in mind as we read this, and then we will talk about it after. Good evening, said Lucy, but the fawn was so busy picking up its parcels that at first it did not reply. When it had finished, it made her a little bow. Good evening, said the fawn. Excuse me, I don't want to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve? My name's Lucy, she said, not quite understanding him. But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl, said the fawn. Of course I'm a girl, said Lucy. You are in fact human? Of course I'm human, said Lucy, still a little puzzled. To be sure, said the fawn. How stupid of me. But I've never seen a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve before. I am delighted, that is to say. And then it stopped, as if it had been going to say something it had not intended, but remembered in time. Delighted, it went on. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus. I am very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. And may I ask, O Lucy, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, how you have come into Narnia? Narnia? What's that? Said Lucy. This is the land of Narnia, said the fawn. Where we are now. All that lies between the lamppost and the great castle of Cair Paravel on the eastern sea. And you have come from the wild woods of the west? I got in through the wardrobe in the spare room, said Lucy. Ah, said Mr. Tumnus in a rather melancholy voice. If only I had worked harder at geography when I was a little fawn, I should no doubt know all about the strange countries. It is too late now. But they aren't countries at all, said Lucy, almost laughing. It's only just back here. At least, I'm not sure. It's summer there." "Meanwhile," said Mr. Tumnus, "it is winter in Narnia, and has been for ever so long, and we shall both catch a cold if we stand here talking in the snow. Daughter of Eve, from the far land of Spare where eternal summer reigns around the bright city of Wardrobe, how would it be if you came and had tea with me?" "Thank you very much, Mr. Tumnus," said Lucy, "but I was wondering whether I ought to be getting back." "It's only just round the corner," said the fawn, "and there will be a roaring fire, and toast, and sardines, and cake." "Well, it's very kind of you," said Lucy, "but I shan't be able to stay long." "If you will take my arm, Daughter of Eve," said Mr. Tumnus, "I shall be able to hold the umbrella over both of us. That's the way. Now, off we go." And so Lucy found herself walking through the wood arm in arm with this strange creature as if they had known one another all their lives. They had not gone far before they came to a place where the ground became rough, and there were rocks all about, and little hills up and little hills down. At the bottom of one small valley, Mr. Tumnus turned suddenly aside as if he were going to walk straight into an unusually large rock, but at the last moment, Lucy found he was leading her into the entrance of a cave. As soon as they were inside, she found herself blinking in the light of a wood fire. Then Mr. Tumnus stooped and took a flaming piece of wood out of the fire with a neat little pair of tongs, and lit a lamp. "Now we shan't be long," he said, and immediately put a kettle on. Lucy thought she had never been in a nicer place. It was a little, dry, clean cave of reddish stone with a carpet on the floor and 2 little chairs. "One for me and one for a friend," said Mr. Tumnus, "and a table and a dresser and a mantelpiece over the fire, and above that a picture of an old faun with a grey beard." In one corner there was a door, which Lucy thought must lead to Mr. Tumnus's bedroom, and on one wall was a shelf full of books. Lucy looked at these while he was setting out the tea things. They had titles like The Life and Letters of Silenus and Nymphs and Their Ways, or Men, Monks, and Gamekeepers, A Study in Popular Legend, or Is Man a Myth? "Now, Daughter of Eve," said the faun. And really it was a wonderful tea. There was a nice brown egg, lightly boiled, for each of them, and then sardines on toast, and then buttered toast, and then toast with honey, and then a sugar-topped cake. And when Lucy was tired of eating, the faun began to talk. He had wonderful tales to tell of life in the forest. He told about the midnight dances, and how the nymphs who lived in the wells and the dryads who lived in the trees came out to dance with the fauns. About long hunting parties after the milk-white stag who could give you wishes if you caught him. About feasting and treasure-seeking with the wild red dwarfs in deep mines and caverns far beneath the forest floor. And then about summer, when the woods were green, and old Silenus, on his fat donkey, would come to visit them. And sometimes Bacchus himself. And then the streams would run with wine instead of water, and the whole forest would give itself up to jollification for weeks on end. Not that it isn't always winter now, he added gloomily. Then to cheer himself up, he took out from its case on the dresser a strange little flute, and looked as if it were made of straw, and began to play. And this tune he played made Lucy want to cry, and laugh, and dance, and go to sleep all at the same time. It must have been hours later when she shook herself and said, "Oh, Mr. Tumnus, I'm so sorry to stop you, and I do love that tune. But really, I must go home. I only meant to stay for a few minutes." "It's no good now, you know," said the fawn, laying down its flute and shaking its head at her very sorrowfully. "No good," said Lucy, jumping up and feeling rather frightened. "What do you mean?" "I've got to go home at once. The others will be wondering what has happened to me." But a moment later, she asked, "Mr. Tumnus, whatever is the matter?" For the fawn's brown eyes had filled with tears, and then the tears began trickling down its cheeks, and soon they were running off the end of its nose, and at last it covered its face with its hands and began to howl. "Mr. Tumnus! Mr. Tumnus!" said Lucy in great distress. Don't! What's the matter? Aren't you well? Dear Mr. Tumnus, do tell me what is wrong." But the fawn continued sobbing, as if his heart would break. And even when Lucy went over and put her arms around him and lent him her handkerchief, he did not stop. He merely took the handkerchief and kept on using it, wringing it out with both hands whenever it got too wet to be any more use, so that presently Lucy was standing in a damp patch. "Mr. Tumnus," bawled Lucy in his ear, shaking him, "do stop! Stop it at once! You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a great big fawn like you! What on earth are you crying about?" Oh, sobbed Mr. Tumnus. "I'm crying because I'm such a bad fawn." "I don't think you're a bad fawn at all," said Lucy. "I think you're a very good fawn. You're the nicest fawn I've ever met." Oh, you wouldn't say that if you knew," replied Mr. Tumnus between his sobs. "No, I'm a bad fawn. I don't suppose there was ever a worse fawn since the beginning of the world." "But what have you done?" asked Lucy. "My old father, now," said Mr. Tumnus. "That's his picture over the mantelpiece. He would never have done a thing like this." "A thing like what?" said Lucy. "Like what I've done," said the fawn. "Taken service under the White Witch? That's what I am. I'm in the pay of the White Witch." "The White Witch? Who's she?" "Why, it's she who has got all Narnia under her thumb. It's she who makes it always winter and never Christmas. Think of that." "How awful," said Lucy. "But what does she pay you for?" "That's the worst of it," said Mr. Tumnus in a deep groan. "I'm a kidnapper for her. That's what I am. Look at me, daughter of Eve. Would you believe that I'm the sort of fawn to meet a poor innocent child in the wood, one that would never have done me any harm, and pretend to be friendly with it and invite it to my home, to my cave, all for the sake of lulling it to sleep and then handing it over to the White Witch?" "No," said Lucy. "I'm sure you wouldn't do anything of the sort." "But I have," said the fawn. "Well," said Lucy rather slowly, for she wanted to be truthful and yet not be too hard on him. "Well, that was pretty bad. But you're so sorry for it that I'm sure you'll never do it again." "Daughter of Eve, don't you understand?" said the fawn. "It isn't something I have done. I'm doing it. Now, this very moment." "What do you mean?" cried Lucy, turning very white. "You're the child," said Tumnus. "I had orders from the White Witch that if I ever saw a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve in the wood, I was to catch them and hand them over to her. And you are the first I have ever met. And I've pretended to be your friend and asked you to tea, and all the time I've been meaning to wait till you were asleep and then go tell her." "Oh, but you won't, Mr. Tumnus," said Lucy. "You won't, will you?" Indeed, you really mustn't." "And if I don't," said he, beginning to cry again, "she's sure to find out. and she'll have my tail cut off, and my horns sawn off, and my beard plucked out. And she'll wave her wand over my beautiful cloven hooves, and turn them into horrid, solid hooves, like the wretched horses. And if she is extra and specially angry, she'll turn me into stone, and I shall be only a statue of a faun in her horrible house until the 4 thrones at Cair Paravel are filled. And goodness knows when that will happen, or whether it will ever happen at all. I'm very sorry, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but please let me go home. Of course I will, said the faun. Of course I've got to. I see that now. I hadn't known what humans were like before I met you. Of course, I can't give you up to the witch. Not now that I know you. But we must be off at once. I'll see you back to the lamppost. I suppose you can find your own way from there back to Spare and Wardrobe? I'm sure I can, said Lucy. We must go as quietly as we can, said Mr. Tumnus. The whole wood is full of her spies. Even some of the trees are on her side. They both got up and left the tea things on the table, and Mr. Tumnus once more put up his umbrella and gave Lucy his arm, and they went out into the snow. The journey back was not at all like the journey to the faun's cave. They stole along as quickly as they could, without speaking a word, and Mr. Tumnus kept to the darkest places. Lucy was relieved when they reached the lamppost again. Do you know your way from here, daughter of Eve? Said Mr. Tumnus. Lucy looked very hard between the trees and could just see in the distance a patch of light that looked like daylight. Yes, she said, I can see the wardrobe door. Then be off home as quick as you can, said the faun, and can you forgive me for what I meant to do? Why, of course I can, said Lucy, shaking him heartily by the hand. And I do hope you won't get into dreadful trouble on my account. Farewell, daughter of Eve, said he. Perhaps I may keep the handkerchief? Rather, said Lucy, and then ran towards the far-off patch of daylight as quickly as her legs would carry her. And presently, instead of rough branches brushing past her, she felt coats, and instead of crunching snow under her feet, she felt wooden boards. And all at once she found herself jumping out of the wardrobe into the same empty room from which the whole adventure had started. She shut the wardrobe door tightly behind her and looked around, panting for breath. It was still raining, and she could hear the voices of the others in the passage. I'm here, she shouted. I'm here. I've come back. I'm all right. Okay, so here we see that in Narnia, Lucy meets a faun named Tumnus, next to the lamppost located on the eastern border of the Narnian region of Lantern Waste. Lucy has the ability to make friends instantly, which she did with Tumnus and, as we'll see, with other characters as well. She makes friends with Tumnus, and it comes out that he is attempting to kidnap her by the order of the White Witch. If he didn't turn Lucy in, he was in danger of being tortured. And Tumnus starts crying because of what he's doing, and Lucy doesn't know what he's done yet, and he's just crying, and so she shakes him. She literally shakes him to try to get him to stop. She says, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a great big faun like you." It's very possible that someone would have told her something like this or similar to this at some point when she had been crying. Lucy was the one who comforted Tumnus, even though she was the one that was being wronged. And to Lucy, it likely seemed that he should be able to handle it because he's clearly older and shouldn't be crying like this. So she comforted him for a while, but then it was time for him to pull himself together. And because she was able to get him to stop crying, they were able to solve the situation. So she was right after all. He should be ashamed of himself. But she was wrong about the reason why. She didn't have all the context at this point, and so he should be ashamed for kidnapping her, but not for crying. Lucy once again displays her pure heart by forgiving Tumnus fully. She is very forgiving in general, and she probably would have forgiven him even if he wasn't crying, but seeing him like that helps her to forgive him. And the thing is, he's repentant, and that always is helpful to see. So Lucy gives him her handkerchief as a sign of friendship. She avoids being kidnapped by Tumnus when he has a change of heart and helps Lucy return home through the wardrobe. Lucy tells her siblings about discovering Narnia, and they naturally don't believe her. But Peter is a supportive big brother to her regardless. He knew that she was young and it was okay to pretend. He was letting her play even though she wasn't trying to play. And despite them not believing her, Lucy is consistent and steadfast to her story. She had very vivid detail when she was describing what she saw, which makes her story more believable, especially for a child. What she was saying was true, and there was a beauty to it. And so, I mean, even like Edmund, as we discussed in the episode we did on him, he was just brutally mean to her about all of this, but she knew that she was telling the truth. And one of her characteristics is that she is truthful. And in this situation, she knew that she was right even if the others didn't believe her. And even though, unfortunately, they were making her feel very unhappy about it. Proverbs 12:19 says, "The truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. A truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment." So if Lucy had been making it up, she would have moved on from it. She would not have stayed to this. And when she tried to move on, and she decides to check the wardrobe again to see if it was all of a sudden a dream, it endures. It was still a reality. And she finds her way back. And so even though nobody believes her, the truth lasts forever. That day, when it came to the afternoon and there was still no sign of a break in the weather, they decided to play hide and seek. Susan was it. And as soon as the others scattered to hide, Lucy went to the room where the wardrobe was. She did not mean to hide in the wardrobe because she knew that would only set the others talking again about the whole wretched business. But she did want to have one more look inside it. For by this time she was beginning to wonder herself whether Narnia and the fawn had not been a dream. The house was so large and complicated and full of hiding places that she thought she would have time to have one look into the wardrobe and then hide somewhere else. But as soon as she reached it, she heard steps in the passage outside. And then there was nothing for it but to jump into the wardrobe and hold the door closed behind her. She did not shut it properly because she knew that it was very silly to shut oneself into a wardrobe, even if it is not a magic one. Now the steps she heard were those of Edmund, and he came into the room just in time to see Lucy vanishing into the wardrobe. He at once decided to go into it himself, not because he thought it a particularly good place to hide, but because he wanted to go on teasing her about her imaginary country. So Lucy goes to check if, Narnia is real and it's still there, like with the wardrobe and all that. She goes back to check. She's wondering if maybe it's a dream. And then she hears footsteps behind her, so she decides to hide in the wardrobe. And this actually sends her back to Narnia, and Edmund had been the one whose footsteps she heard, and so he sees her go in and he follows her in, and that is where he has his whole encounter with the White Witch, which, check out the last episode we did on Edmund if you want more detail on that, and the episode on the White Witch, really. But Edmund actually ends up seeing Lucy as well in Narnia, and then the two of them come back into our world, and of course Lucy is telling Peter and Susan about the experience, and Edmund denies everything to them, and this makes Lucy miserable. And this is when Peter and Susan decide to get the professor involved, which backfires when the professor believes Lucy's story and encourages them to believe Lucy as well, because she is a truthful person. So a few days later, Lucy and all her siblings now find their way into Narnia through the wardrobe. It of course comes out that Edmund had lied about his time in Narnia, and Peter gets mad at him for this. Edmund apologizes to Lucy and asks if she will shake hands with him. Now Lucy, being the forgiving person that she is, which we've seen already, says of course, and forgives him by shaking his hand. Lucy wanted to take her siblings to meet her new friend and to go to Mr. Tumnus's house. And when they get there, they see that it's destroyed, and they find a threatening note from the police. Everyone has a different opinion on what they should do, but it is Peter who says that Lucy should decide what to do, and Lucy wants to save Mr. Tumnus. We see more of Lucy's innocence when she sees a robin and tries to talk to it, which would have been dangerous in a strange place that she still didn't know everything about. But she didn't think anything of it. It flies next to a tree, and all four of them take a step closer. So her siblings here are following Lucy's bravery, and their understanding of what is possible is starting to change. Lucy asks the robin where Mr. Tumnus is, but gets no answer. And it is at this time that they meet Mr. Beaver. Now, Mr. Beaver was earnestly beckoning to them. And the four figure that if this beaver is in fact an enemy, they all could take him. Like, they're thinking like, yeah, we can take this guy. There's four of us and this is a beaver. But Mr. Beaver is in fact a friend who wants to help them. So he asks them if they are sons of Adam and daughters of Eve. And when he realizes that they are in fact, then he invites them to come with him back to his lodge for a meal. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver explain that Narnia is under an enchantment of eternal winter, which was caused by the White Witch, who falsely calls herself the Queen of Narnia. Now, obviously, Lucy already knew about this, not in detail, but Tumnus had kind of alluded to this. They also tell the kids about the Golden Age prophecy, which all four of them were to help fulfill. And again, Tumnus kind of alluded to this when he mentioned it, but so each of the Pevensie children had a specific feeling when they first heard the name of Aslan. For Lucy, it was like the beginning of vacation, waking up in the morning feeling. And so Edmund ends up sneaking away to betray them, goes to the White Witch, and Mr. Beaver leads them to meet Aslan. Along the way, the witch's powers are weakening, and they are visited by Father Christmas, who gives them gifts. Lucy got a dagger, as well as a magical healing cordial that was made from the juice of fire flowers that grow in the valleys of the sun, and it was kept in a diamond bottle. Father Christmas tells them that battles are ugly when women are involved, and hopes that the girls never have to fight. Now, before you go thinking that this is sexist or something, stop right there. Lucy wasn't bothered when she was told this, and so neither should you be. And, I mean, the thing is, Lucy wasn't bothered by it, but Lucy, as we see later in other books, she does fight. So it's not that she didn't necessarily want to or was afraid to. I mean, maybe she was afraid to, but anyways. Lucy, her siblings, and the beavers arrive at the stone table where they meet the great lion, Aslan. As I mentioned before, Lucy always put others first. Her first request to Aslan was asking him to do something for her brother Edmund. Aslan says that all should be done, but it may be harder than you think. When he said this, he looked sad to Lucy. Obviously, we know Aslan knew what needed to be done, and it made him sad. So Aslan sends a search party to rescue Edmund and bring him back to camp. Aslan forgives Edmund, but then the witch comes to claim Edmund, but Aslan makes a deal with the witch. And one night, Lucy and her sister Susan sneak away from camp at night, where they notice Aslan walking away from the camp, and they join him up to a certain point. After this, Aslan continues on his own, but the girls end up witnessing his death by the hands of the White Witch and her fiendish minions. The next morning, they also witness Aslan's resurrection, and we've talked about this in other episodes, so you can check those out if you want. But through Lucy, we get to see both sides of the effect of Aslan's submission to the deep magic. We see both the evil falling upon the lion and the lions doing something dreadful. This is how C.S. Lewis views the death of Christ, both as tragic and necessary. She is so caught up in Aslan's explanation of his resurrection and its meaning that Lucy doesn't know why she is laughing as she scrambles over the broken stone table to reach him. And yeah, I think it was the episode either 1 or 2 where Lucy, Susan, and Aslan, they have this romp like no other. And Lucy notices that Aslan's paws are terrible, and she was the one who noticed the playfulness and the gentle touch of his paws as well. So we continue to see her innocence on things, and she's seeing things and noticing things that others don't. Just like how when they were, before Aslan resurrected and they were trying to take the ropes off of him, a bunch of field mice came to help. And while Susan was repulsed, Lucy, she saw what Susan didn't, and that they were actually helping them by gnawing at the ropes. So we keep seeing this theme of Lucy seeing things the way that others don't. So the girls hop on his back, and he takes them to the White Witch's courtyard, which is now abandoned. So here, Aslan restores the stone statues and leads them all as reinforcements to the battlefield at Beruna. Not all the reinforcements were skilled in battle, and this included Lucy, and so they were not part of the fighting. And in the end, they were victorious, as Aslan ended the life of the witch. Lucy goes on to save many lives with her cordial. One of those lives included her brother Edmund, who had been badly injured during the battle. When she gave Edmund some of the healing cordial, she wanted to wait there with her brother and see the results of it. But she ends up being cross with Aslan, but then she responds to his growl immediately because he wanted her to go help the others that were injured as well. So Lucy really showed her humility with helping Aslan heal the others on the battlefield. And Lucy and Susan, they had this disagreement on if they should tell Edmund what Aslan did for him. At this time, it is only the girls that really know what Aslan did for him. And so Susan didn't want to tell him. She thinks it would be too awful to know something like that. And Lucy wants to tell him, but their conversation gets interrupted. Lewis never actually tells us if Lucy ever told Edmund what Aslan did for him, but I think she must have, otherwise what Aslan did would be meaningless. Plus, Edmund and Lucy, they talk a lot about Narnia when they're back in England, but it is Lucy who notices the depths of Edmund's transformation. So really, I do think that he was told at some point, because otherwise, what was the point of Aslan doing what he did, right? It was important for Edmund and his faith. So 2 days later, they're at Castle Cair Paravel. Lucy and her siblings were crowned kings and queens of Narnia, and Lucy was crowned Queen Lucy the Valiant because of her strong will and her courageous heart. And with this, the Golden Age prophecy was officially fulfilled. This all took place in Narnia year 1000. And so, what happened during their reign is it's briefly talked about in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but some of the more specific things are mentioned in Horse and His Boy, which is another book we'll get to. But just to kind of highlight it, during her reign, obviously, she helped her siblings restore Narnia to its former glory. She fought in the Narnian army that rid the country of bandits and giants. She sailed on the Splendor Highline to the Eastern Ocean, where they visited Narnia's neglected islands. She helped establish an island with the Kingdom of Archenland and opened diplomatic channels with the country of Calormen. Now, I'm sure some of this is repetitive because I've mentioned it in other episodes because some of the siblings are together with this. So while King Peter was leading a raid on the Northern Giants, Susan and Edmund were on a diplomatic mission to Calormen, Queen Lucy stayed back at Cair Paravel and oversaw the domestic affairs of the country. Word was sent by a messenger stag that the Calormen army was marching northward to hit Archenland with a surprise attack. So Lucy gathered the Narnian troops, and they marched to Anvard, where they fought to protect Archenland from the Calormen invaders. Now, Anvard is just the name for the castle in Archenland. So Lucy fought bravely in this battle as an archer, giving needed support for the Narnian army. And so so Lucy was willing to fight when she needed to. They were victorious, and they captured Calormen's prince, Rabadash, and put him on trial right there on the battlefield. Now, while many others wanted to cast harsh punishments on Rabadash, now this is where we see Lucy's character again. The others, they wanted harsh punishments for Rabadash, but Lucy advises them to show him mercy so that, there was two reasons. One, they could preserve the diplomatic relations with Calormen, and two, probably the more important one, that Prince Rabadash would have personal redemption for himself. Now, on this day, when she showed this mercy for Rabadash, everyone in the three nations, Narnia, Calormen, and Archenland, saw Lucy display wisdom, justice, strength, and even-handed ruling. Now, then less than a year later, the kings and queens, they're all reunited again, Cair Paravel, and they get word, I believe from Tumnus actually, that a white stag had been spotted in the region of Lantern Waste. So they go on a journey to find the white stag because it could grant them any wish. And while there, they came upon a strange iron post that was planted in the ground that looked vaguely familiar to them. It's like in the back of their memory. So as they continued on, they started to slowly remember their old lives from 15 years earlier. The tree branches became fur coats, and they all ended up spilling out into the wardrobe back into our world once again as children in the year 1940. They had only been gone for minutes in our world. And this is something I actually want to touch on in a future episode. I don't know if I'll do an episode fully on this. I don't know if we have enough information to do it. We probably do. But the time difference in Narnia is very strange if you think about it. So they were gone for minutes in our world, but they had 15 years in Narnia. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, we'll break that down in a future episode yet, but it's just something kind of crazy to think about for me, at least. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Faithful Fables. Now, I must say, this is the last full episode for Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So now I might do some smaller or shorter bonus episodes here and there about maybe some minor characters, but basically Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is done, and you can expect us to start Prince Caspian pretty soon. So yeah, thank you for listening to today's episode. I think we learned some valuable lessons from the life of Lucy. I mean, as far as being pure in heart, I think there is something to say for that. You know, don't stay focused on the big things in life. You know, take time, you know, focus on things that maybe you think don't matter or don't need much attention, and maybe re-examine it. Maybe they do actually. Maybe they don't, but maybe it's worthwhile to stay back in that empty room and take a look at that wardrobe. It's just something to think about. And as we think about this as well, like, she's a child in this book. She's 8 years old, and Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven belongs to the children. And so there's really something for thinking and just having like that childlike faith, that childlike mindset of like just that innocence and that purity of heart. You know, she put others first, and she was willing to comfort somebody who was wronging her. Very easy to she's very forgiving. She forgave Edmund and Tumnus. And I think that's really encouraging, and I think it's something that we should look at for our own personal lives. So thank you for listening. Make sure you comment and you rate the episode. Let's get it into people's algorithms. And yeah, thank you everybody. So yeah, until next time, there's only one thing left to say, and that is stay faithful.